The summer of 1985 was unlike anything Los Angeles had experienced before. The city was alive with its usual rhythm. Freeways stretched endlessly beneath the California sun. Families gathered in suburban neighborhoods. Businesses thrived. Millions of people went about their daily lives believing they were safe inside their homes. What they did not know was that a predator was already moving through the darkness. He left no clear pattern, no specific victim type, no obvious motive. He attacked men, women, couples, and children. Some survived, many did not. He entered homes at night, often through unlocked doors or windows, and vanished before sunrise. The media would eventually give him a name that captured the fear spreading across Southern California, the Night Stalker. And for more than a year, one of the largest manhunts in American criminal history would unfold across the state. This is the story of Richard Ramirez and the hunt that finally brought his reign of terror to an end. Richard Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960 in El Paso, Texas. He grew up in a troubled household marked by violence, instability, and frequent conflict. Several accounts from family members later described a difficult childhood. Ramirez suffered multiple head injuries as a young boy, including incidents that caused him to lose consciousness. While no single event can explain the actions he would later commit, investigators and psychologists would spend years examining the factors that shaped his development. One of the most influential figures in his life was his cousin, Miguel Ramirez. Miguel was a Vietnam War veteran who often shared graphic stories about combat, torture, and killing. According to later reports, he also showed young Richard disturbing photographs from the war. The exposure to extreme violence at an early age appeared to have a profound effect on him. In 1973, an event occurred that many observers would later view as significant. During an argument, Miguel shot and killed his wife in front of Richard. The teenager witnessed the murder firsthand. The image remained with him for years. As he entered adolescence, Ramirez began experimenting with drugs and engaging in criminal behavior. He became increasingly isolated. School performance declined. Petty crimes escalated. By the late 1970s, he left Texas and moved to California. There, he drifted between friends' homes, cheap hotels, and temporary residences. He developed a growing addiction to cocaine and other substances. At the same time, he spent much of his time committing burglaries and studying the vulnerabilities of homes. The skills he learned as a thief would later become deadly. The first murder officially linked to Ramirez occurred on June 28, 1984. 79-year-old Jenny Vinco was found dead inside her Los Angeles apartment. She had been brutally attacked. The killing shocked investigators, but there was little evidence connecting the crime to a larger pattern. At the time, it appeared to be an isolated homicide. No one knew it was only the beginning. Months passed, then the attacks resumed. On March 17, 1985, Ramirez entered the home of 64-year-old Maria Hernandez and her roommate Dale Okazaki. He shot Hernandez in the face. Remarkably, she survived. Believing she was dead, Ramirez fled and encountered Okazaki outside. He shot and killed her before escaping. The same night, he murdered Leon Yu in another attack. The violence appeared random. Victims had no connection to one another. The locations varied widely. Investigators struggled to identify a clear motive or profile. Just 10 days later, on March 27th, Ramirez struck again. Vincent Zazzara and his wife Maxine were attacked inside their home. Vincent was shot and killed. Maxine was subjected to a horrific assault before being murdered. Evidence collected from the scene suggested an extremely dangerous offender who was becoming increasingly bold. The brutality disturbed even experienced detectives. As spring turned into summer, the attacks accelerated. Each new crime scene deepened the mystery. Ramirez targeted elderly victims in some cases. In others, he attacked younger adults. Sometimes he used firearms. Other times he used knives, blunt force, or physical violence. The unpredictability created a unique challenge for law enforcement. Traditional profiling methods offered limited help because there was no consistent victim type. Fear began spreading across Southern California. Residents started locking doors and windows more carefully. Gun sales increased. Neighborhood watch groups expanded. Many people refused to sleep with windows open despite the summer heat. News reports dominated television broadcasts. The killer seemed capable of appearing anywhere. Then came one of the most disturbing elements of the case. Several survivors reported that Ramirez forced them to swear allegiance to Satan. Investigators discovered satanic symbols connected to some crime scenes. Media coverage focused heavily on these details. The image of a satanic serial killer stalking neighborhoods at night captured public attention and intensified fear. As the body count rose, pressure mounted on police agencies. The attacks crossed jurisdictional boundaries. Different cities and counties were suddenly dealing with crimes that appeared connected. Detectives realized they were likely hunting a single offender responsible for multiple murders. A task force was assembled. Information from numerous investigations was combined. Evidence was reviewed repeatedly. Witness descriptions became critical. Many survivors described a thin man with dark hair, bad teeth, and intense eyes. Yet despite the growing amount of information, his identity remained unknown. On May 14, 1985, 83-year-old Mabel Bell was attacked in her home. Just hours later, another victim, 81-year-old Florence Lang, was assaulted. The attacks demonstrated a terrifying reality. Age offered no protection. Location offered no protection. No one could predict where the killer would strike next. Throughout the summer, the violence continued. In July, Ramirez murdered 66-year-old Joyce Nelson. Soon afterward, he attacked Chris Peterson and her husband. Peterson survived and provided investigators with valuable information. Her description helped strengthen the emerging profile. One of the most significant breakthroughs occurred on August 8, 1985. Ramirez entered the home of Chris and Virginia Peterson. After attacking them, he fled the scene. A witness noticed the vehicle he was using and recorded information that would prove crucial. Investigators discovered the car abandoned shortly afterward. Inside, forensic technicians found fingerprints. At the time, fingerprint databases were far less advanced than they are today. Nevertheless, detectives quickly recognized the importance of the evidence. The prints were entered into law enforcement systems. Soon a match was found. The suspect finally had a name, Richard Ramirez. The discovery transformed the investigation. For the first time, police knew who they were hunting. His criminal history provided additional information. Authorities obtained photographs. Investigators distributed his image to law enforcement agencies and news organizations. The public soon saw the face behind months of terror. Meanwhile, Ramirez remained unaware that investigators had identified him. He had traveled to Arizona during part of the investigation. When he returned to California in late August, everything had changed. His face was everywhere. Newspapers displayed his photograph. Television broadcasts discussed the case continuously. Police actively searched for him across the state. On August 30th, 1985, Ramirez stepped off a bus in Los Angeles. He immediately noticed newspaper coverage about the manhunt. Realizing authorities were searching for him, he attempted to flee, but something extraordinary happened. Members of the public recognized him. Word spread rapidly through the neighborhood. People began pointing him out. Residents chased him through the streets. At one point, Ramirez attempted to steal a vehicle to escape. The effort failed. More people joined the pursuit. The crowd grew larger. Several citizens confronted him directly. Some physically restrained him. Others prevented his escape until police arrived. After more than a year of fear and uncertainty, the Night Stalker had finally been captured. The arrest generated enormous media attention. For many residents, relief replaced months of anxiety, but the legal process was only beginning. The trial would become one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings of the decade. Jury selection alone took months. Public interest was immense. Security concerns were significant. Evidence presented during the trial linked Ramirez to numerous murders, sexual assaults, burglaries, and attempted murders. Survivor testimony proved especially...
I came here today to tell you exactly what happened. I saw him pull the trigger. There is no doubt in my mind.
Powerful. Individuals who had encountered Ramirez face-to-face described the attacks in chilling detail. Forensic evidence strengthened the prosecution's case. Fingerprints connected him to multiple crime scenes. Ballistics evidence supported key findings. Witness identifications added further confirmation. The trial was not without complications. In 1989, one juror was murdered by her boyfriend in an unrelated incident, creating additional delays and media attention. Despite the challenges, proceedings continued. Ramirez often displayed unusual behavior in court. He made references to Satanism and appeared to embrace the notoriety surrounding the case. His actions generated headlines but did little to alter the evidence against him. On September 20th, 1989, the jury returned its verdict. Richard Ramirez was convicted of multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, sexual assault, and burglary. The verdict reflected the scale of the crimes committed during his campaign of terror. He was sentenced to death. For survivors and victims' families, the decision marked the conclusion of a painful chapter that had lasted for years. Yet the impact of the Night Stalker case extended far beyond the courtroom. The investigation influenced how law enforcement agencies shared information across jurisdictions. Detectives recognized the importance of coordinated communication when dealing with mobile serial offenders. The case also highlighted the growing role of forensic science. Fingerprint evidence ultimately provided the breakthrough that identified the suspect. Public awareness of personal security changed as well. Throughout Southern California, residents adopted habits that became routine long after the murders ended. Locked doors, alarm systems, and neighborhood watch programs became more common. The fear created by the Night Stalker lingered for years. Richard Ramirez remained on death row for decades. His appeals moved slowly through the legal system. In June 2013, before his execution could be carried out, he died from complications related to cancer while incarcerated. His death closed the final chapter of his life, but not the story of the investigation that brought him down. Today, the Night Stalker case remains one of the most infamous serial murder investigations in American history. It stands apart because of the randomness of the attacks. Most serial offenders follow patterns. Most choose specific victim types. Richard Ramirez did neither. That unpredictability turned ordinary neighborhoods into places of uncertainty and fear. The case also serves as a reminder of how quickly a single offender can affect millions of lives. For more than a year, Southern California lived under the shadow of a killer who appeared impossible to predict and difficult to stop. Yet despite the fear, despite the confusion, and despite the growing body count, investigators continued following every lead available. Witnesses came forward, survivors shared their experiences, forensic specialists examined every piece of evidence, and eventually the smallest details combined to reveal the identity of the man responsible. In the end, the Night Stalker was not caught through a dramatic shootout or a sophisticated undercover operation. He was identified through evidence, exposed through investigation, and ultimately stopped by ordinary citizens who recognized him when it mattered most. The terror that had gripped Southern California finally ended not because the killer disappeared, but because an entire community refused to let him escape. And that remains one of the most remarkable aspects of the Night Stalker case. A serial killer who spent months hiding in the darkness was ultimately brought into the light by the very people he had spent so long terrorizing.